I was reading some Keely material, and it mentioned an interesting experiment where you take...
Are fundamentally different. We got any more questions on some of this?
Are you familiar with the work of Rudolf Steiner?
Yes.
Because Steiner, I guess through clairvoyant insights, whatever, or also natural observation, arrived to the conclusion that the life force expresses its flow in vortexes. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you could correlate that to Keely, if there was an analogy somehow.
Yes, there is. Keely made a statement to the same effect. He said all force manifests in vortex motion. And at first glimpse, when you first look at that statement, you say, well, that's absurd because lasers don't vortex and all this other kind of stuff. And you got to remember that the information we have on Keely is scraps, bits and pieces that we found in newspaper articles, magazine articles. And so we got to take these little scraps and use a little bit of deduction and whatnot and try and figure out in what context was this thing said. And I think that the answer to that goes back to this original drawing. That we can't have any vibration without all three modes. And if that's the case, then he's correct. That we can't have any manifestation of any kind of energy unless we got the vortex at the same time. So we may have a radiant type phenomena going on, but it's going to cause a rotation. And I've got another thing here that shows how rotation can come about. This reflects wave motion in water. If you had a stick sitting on the water and the water is got a wave motion in the water, the stick doesn't go anywhere. It just goes up and down, up and down, up and down. The same thing with the atom or the molecules of the water itself. It looks like the molecules of the water are moving along with the wave front, but that's not true. The molecules of the water are actually rotating. So here we've got a polarization effect causing rotation again. When we've got compression on the water, we get a rise in the water altitude, which is the wave that we see. But right next to it, we have a decrease in the pressure, which is the trough of the wave. So we've got positive and negative forces combining together to create rotation of the particles that make the water up. So that's about the best I can do with that statement. Yeah, Steiner also went on to say in 1913, in a previously unpublished lecture that they translated just recently, a few years ago, that the science of the future would be based on sympathetic vibration. So he was very well aware of Keely's work at that time. This is just to demonstrate some of the modern morphology ideas on how the molecules and atoms are put together. The molecules made of atoms are made of electrons are made of photons, and photons are made out of quarks. That's exactly Keely's definition. 20 years before they admitted an electron existed.
So would you say that Keely was clairvoyant?
He was definitely exceedingly very clairvoyant. I mean, how else would this man or any man get the knowledge that he had? There's just no explanation for it. He took a little bit of science, a little bit of mathematics, and he far exceeded anything we can even dream of today, much less do it. We're just struggling. We're just struggling along. Any more questions on some things? Getting back to the mind control machines, I'm going to be skipping around now because I kind of losing my place here a little bit. Mind control machines. We've got radionic machines that are nothing other than drawings on a piece of paper, and we can get effects from these devices. What's going on? You know, how can we treat a photograph and have an effect take place miles away from the source? You know, what's the principle here? What's happening? If we go back to what Keely was saying about the brain being an acoustic resonator. Now, acoustics, a sound wave isn't just something we can hear. A sound wave can exist at any frequency. A sound wave is a compression wave, okay, compression rarefaction. So we can go up to these infinitely high levels of frequencies in the gamma range frequencies, or light frequencies, and we still maintain compression rarefaction with many, very exceedingly high frequencies. The brain, the physical gray matter of the brain with its convolutions and its really neat shape that it has, if we look at it as an acoustic resonator, we say, okay, well, we got this thing, and every brain's different. It's physically different. Each brain, therefore, would have a unique collection of frequencies associated with it. So if we could write those down, we would write them as a musical notation. So the frequency is not really that important, but we would have a unique collection of notes that this particular brain that we're looking at would resonate to and vibrate to. Now, when we look at numbers, like if we look at this number 16, now this is a little bit, I want to give you a little exercise here. All this is two squiggles on a piece of paper. I made one squiggle down and one that's got a curly Q on it. If we weren't previously conditioned to read this as 16, what would we see? We would see two squiggles. That's all we would see. It would mean nothing to us. If you can set yourself aside from your previous conditioning and look at that as a symbol, this is a symbol. When we perceive it with our minds, with our eye and into our mind's eye, certain parts of the brain are activated. Certain parts of the brain are excited in a certain way because of the particular configuration that this is. If we saw this squiggle down here, we would get a different type of excitement. A different thing would take place within the physical brain. So when Keely made his machinery, and he could go over to the wall and draw a symbol on the wall and have the motor start, what he was doing was exciting those particular places within the brain to emit a particular chord of frequencies. It's like tuning a radio or sounding a trumpet or any other kind of acoustical device. If you excite that device, you're going to get a certain particular chord of frequencies. And if his motor was tuned to those frequencies, it would react. That's why our bodies react the way they react. According to Keely's philosophy, it is the etheric currents going through the body on these high levels, in tune with the aspects or the pieces and the materiality that is our hand. We have that sympathetic connection, so there's a sympathetic stream of vibrations going down through the materiality of your body. And if you happen to be holding a spoon just right, it will do what you want it to do. So we have this connection. There is this innate connection between the brain and the mind and the etheric currents and the materiality of the realm that we live in. Question over here.
How can you consciously tune into that vibration as far as with your mind and other objects? I mean, from my studies, I understand that one, there has to be a sincerity from a positive standpoint, or it will be very limited. But how can you fine-tune yourself to that level?
Okay. Keep going back to this chart. That chart and this other chart are absolutely fundamental to understanding this. Earlier we showed how mind is a particle. Mind energy is this realm of superfine particles, energetic particles that pervade the entire universe. So that is the mind field, if you want to call it.